speak about Heyday 12 years and beyond. I'll leave you with our lovely Maya.
Hi. Thank you. Wow, okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. So I'm going to talk about Heyday, 12 years and beyond. So let's just start. Yes. I'll start by introducing myself. So I'm Maya. I'm 41. I was born and raised in Israel from Tel Aviv. Can you make this a bit bigger? Thank you. This is the easy one because I know myself pretty well. But I live in Helsinki. So when some people ask me, like, why Helsinki, I would say probably it's the gaming industry and it's Supercell, right? I'm the general manager for Heyday. I've been with the company for the last year and a half. So I'm going to try to represent the game as well as I can because I've only been there for a year and a half. And I'm actually going to talk about the last 12 years and going forward a little bit. Before that, I used to work in Playtika, and before that in Jelly Button Games, and also in Product Madness, which was also a UK-based company. But let's talk about Heyday. So probably some of you know this, but our dream is to create games that as many people as possible play for years and are remember forever, which kind of makes this talk more relevant, right? Because this is what we're trying to achieve. So if you haven't seen this before, Supercell was founded on the idea of giving like small independent teams the place to create the games that they want to play, the games that they believe in. So kind of like over a decade later, I think we have 6 global games and the dream still stands. So if you look at this is kind of like the timeline of the last of our game releases. And I think what's actually relevant for me here is the fact that Heyday was this first Supercell game launched on iPad. You keep changing that, and thank you. So that was like the first game that was released on iPad, and that was back in 2012. So let's talk about the market situation in 2012. I don't know how many of you were back then, but it was Facebook game saturation. A lot of games were on Facebook back then. It was iPhone was really becoming pretty popular, but there was like a few free-to-play games back then. iPad was launched. There were not a lot of games that were actually crafted for touch games. And I think that was one of the major things back then, right? A lot of games were from the Facebook platform, and they were pivoted to mobile, but didn't really understand kind of like how do we make the touch experience much more enhanced. And this is kind of like what brought us to releasing Heyday. So this is actually an original email sent between Ilka and Timur, who was back then the game lead for the game. So they decided to launch the game. This was back in 2011. And as you can see, the brief was the best farming game for tablets. So so the promise was very clear back then. First, it was to create a game that defines the farming genre. The second was use the benefits of the platform. Don't copy others. Use reality as an inspiration, which actually brings us to Kate's previous talk. Avoid introducing complex game systems and frictionless design. So all of this was back then, 2011, end of 2011, but this was the pillars that Heyday was crafted on. So, and we're talking about the graphical interface back then. I don't know if Heyday was one of the first games that introduced kind of like the crop and harvest mechanism. So I think this was actually a really good example of using that graphical interface of the tablet to do the farming experience. So you plant the seed, and then you harvest them later. So really leveraging touch platform at its best. So June 2012, the game is launched. And since then, the game continued to evolve. But I think what's interesting is that even with the evolution of the game, we stayed true to the promise of the game and what we mentioned before. So really, everything that was delivered was through introducing new characters, new areas, new expansions of the game, really creating this kind of like environment out there of what it means to play in the Heyday world. So yeah, Heyday, keeping true to that promise, I think actually helps us to reach our goal, which was to continue to consistently be stable through these last 12 years. And it still remains the biggest farming mobile game out there. Maybe just kind of like a nice celebration is that we are more than 1 billion barns created in the game. Thank you. And this is, we don't usually show graphs, but I'll show you something that is pretty remarkable. This is our monthly active players through the beginning of time until today. And I think what you can see here is like we have a really loyal, stable player base that has been kind of like growing even in the last few years. So I think this kind of like these, and by the way, these small peaks actually reflect small growth viral spurts. But as you can see, like even together, the game still is relevant. The game still has those kind of like interesting growth virality touch to it. So how do we continue to deliver that experience? I think if we're going back to the idea that we mentioned earlier, it's really giving game teams those kind of like independence to decide what kind of games they want to make and how they choose to make them. So the Heyday team throughout the years continue to do just that, right? We make a game that we believe and we want to make. And then we put a lot of focus and effort on this part. Like we still want the best games, to be the best place for the best teams to make the best games. And you probably have seen this, right? This is the Supercell model. So it's kind of like flipping the usual metrics of the organization upside down and giving all the powers to the game teams to decide. So this is kind of like the independent team. It's called cells, which is like Supercell, what it's built on. And the idea is that these small independent teams are truly empowered to kind of like to do the work that they want to and they believe that to do. And I think kind of like the how do we do this and how do we keep this model, right? So it's these three core values. So the first is independence and responsibility. So these independent game cells drive the culture, and they're focused on their own responsibility, the collaboration, and Supercell first mindset for players and for the long-term success. So when they need to choose something and understand what to do, they have the responsibility that is for the game, but also for the company. The other one is ambition and risk-taking, right? We aim high. We're creating an industry-defining games, and we have to embrace risks, and we have to also be willing to make mistakes. We need to kill weak projects and celebrate the big dreams and learn from failures, which is probably the most important one. And then last is kindness and humility. We stay humble, we value teamwork, we embrace curiosity, and we treat everybody with respect and openness and empathy. So again, like I mentioned this model, but I think if we want to stay true and deliver the best experience to our player, we have to also make to grow, right? And then this means that the team did scale. So Heyday team today is 50 people. But to keep the model alive of the small game teams, what we did is we split the game team into 3 subcells. And each one of these subcells is actually the one that creates the decision-making and drives the gameplay under their own domain. And then last, to kind of like make sure that this all works, then we added a layer of leads to help foster this collaboration. And maybe important to say, it's not the same amount of leads as subcells, so the leads is actually not part of the subcell, and then what the leads are in charge of is making sure that these independent cells have that openness and collaboration and the clear communication between them. Yeah, and every decision that these subcells make have the player's interests first, right? So our player, they come first when we take decisions. Because we want to make Heyday better. So many people as possible play it for years and remember it forever. And I think one of the interesting things here is that we're not talking about scaling revenues. We're talking about creating the best game that we can. We're talking about as many people as possible that will want to play our game. We're talking about playing it for years and remember it forever. So this is our team mission, kind of like through the Supercell dream. And this is kind of like an example of how we are trying to communicate with the players. I don't know if you've seen this, but in the Heyday YouTube channel, then you can see this is where we're talking every month. We have a Dairy News where our community member talks with the players, get their feedback. And this is actually something that we did just recently when we did a Q&A. So players just posted questions and we answered them as open and as we could. I think some answers, the players wanted more defined answers, but this is what we could give them, but we try to be as open and as honest as we can. And then we also try to stay true to our promise throughout all of this time, right? So we know who we are. We want to be the #1 farming lifestyle simulator where everyone can become a prosperous farmer. And I think this is one of the key things here, is staying true to that promise that we made earlier. We're a farming game, we're a farming lifestyle simulator, where everybody has a chance to become that prosperous farmer. So I think maybe on that note, we just launched this. It's not working.
You might know me for being angry, but that was the old me. In my pursuit of harmony, I tried it all. I tried affirmations. Be calm. I am calm! Digital detoxing. Talk to me. Weighted blankets. Well, this is stupid. I even tried laughter therapy. But the recipe for my calmness was right here all along. It's the essence of harmony. I know what you're thinking. Gordon hasn't really changed. He'll always be angry. Mother! Oh, the pigs are back. Download Heyday now and find your inner peace. My brand new fucking boots. Still happy?
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the interesting, 1 second before that, just stay on the previous one. Yeah, just don't start the video. Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this campaign is that it comes from a place where we try to understand why players play Heyday. And we found out that players play our game because that's where they get that sense of relaxation, of calmness, something to control in this chaotic world that they live in. And I think this is exactly where we try to say, okay, so who are the people that we want to encourage to be calmer? And this is where Gordon Ramsay came in place as this character that, this person that is actually becoming this calmer person. And with him, we're launching this new platform of Heyday as this earned relaxation. And so this is just the beginning. There's also a lot more to come. And then the next slide. Yes. So if you scan this, you actually get this decoration for our game, so feel free to scan the game and play. This is how we're recruiting new players, by the way. It's much cheaper than any UA. Yeah, so this is about Heyday, so thank you. I think I try to leave time for questions. Thank you. I know them from the past, yeah. Any questions?
Yeah. You choose.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maya, for the presentation. It was super insightful. I'm just wondering, a 12-year-old game, what do you balance or what do you aim for? New users, or do you try to maintain the interest of those old users that I believe have been growing with you?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think it's, you look at it through a lens of what comes first. I think first we have our players and we owe them everything that we are today. So the first, when we take a decision is making sure that they have the best experience. But I think also Heyday still has a lot to deliver to a new audience. And then that's the second one. So how do we continue to grow that audience, but in a way that stays true to the original audience that has been playing our game for years? And then I think when you have those two at scale, at balance, that's how you take those decisions. But yes, there's a lot of place for new players. There's also a lot of place for existing players. And I think the last part is how do we bring back players who've played with us? I think there are still a billion barns out there, right? And we just want them all to come back. Yeah. 2 more minutes. I think we have time for another question. Yeah? Yes.
So, did you ever have a moment when you wanted to diverge away from the sort of key criteria that you were building the game on? And if so, what was it?
To make a game that is not a farming and lifestyle simulator?
Or to add to it?
I think as long as, again, and this kind of answers the first questions, right? Because we have such a loyal audience to begin with. So anything that we do, we need to make sure that we keep that fantasy of farming lifestyle there. So we're trying to kind of like expand that fantasy world. And I think you've seen it kind of like through all the features that we've been releasing in the last 12 years and even in the last few years, they all expand that fantasy life of being that prosperous farmer. And I think we never wanted to pivot out of that, but we're always trying to challenge, okay, what does that mean? And what does that mean today? And what did that mean in the past? And how do we stay true to our promise, but still evolve? So yeah, thank you for the question. Okay, I think we have one last one. Where was the person? Yes.
Hello.
Okay.
Games accumulate complexity over time. Like a 12-year-old game has got a lot of old features. How are you thinking about retiring features or deciding what you keep and what you get rid of?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll keep it at that. No, I think it's a lot of data and openness with our community, and I think this is going to be kind of like understanding which features are still kind of like kicking it and still are loved by our players. Those are the ones that we keep or enhance. But we also, through that, understand which features and which parts of our game are not as clear and not really part of that main game loop and that main fantasy. And that's how we decide. But I think it will be every decision that we make, we try to make it with kind of like the balance between the best data that we can do and the best gut feeling based on our experience. So yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody.